I'm here in my capacity as a fan of the written word to start with, in particular George R.R. Martin. I am particularly excited to see that Game of Thrones has debuted to big numbers in the USA over the weekend. And yeah, I'm also a member of the George Martin fan group, the Brotherhood Without Banners. There's a few of them sitting down the front with recording devices, by the looks of it.
Don't get nervous.
No. Who have been knighted by George, so we're fairly good fans there. We've met him a couple of times and know what his thoughts are on the work, and that's the capacity that I'm in here tonight. So,
I'm here to moderate and make sure these good gentlemen don't fight amongst themselves. Hey, settle down. But what I thought if you guys are happy enough, we might maybe just start with 5 minutes each, just about some of your broad thoughts, maybe a few examples, and then we'll get into some questions and a bit of back and forth.
Lost in translation. I mean, I always remember waiting with much bated breath for June, because we loved the book. And you'd hear rumours about one team working on it, and then another, and then another. And then finally it came out, so we thundered down to the cinema and sat there, and up came this film, and we sat there going, what? And that was the first lesson in how radically wrong things seem to go between the two. I mean, from a writing standpoint, I mean, someone came to me and said, do you know the book Ringworld? So I was raised on it. What do you think? Says, I know Larry Nevin, I've met him. He's a prick, but I've met him. I think it's an excellent book, but it's a terribly flawed book. Are you planning on actually doing this as a film? Well, so when I look at it as well, to bring this, really, all we've got is a very simple story where some people find a place and decide to go to it, and they take some pictures left and right, and then they go home. Says, all right, there's some aspects that the book didn't quite develop well, was trying to. These are what we would expand a bit in our presentation to put screen tension that will actually make a screen story. So there's a different process involved in turning something that works well as a book into the screen, unless it's a very visual, very cinematic writer. But in the end, you've really got somewhere between 90 and 120 minutes to tell a story that, as a written word story, with every scene put in loving attention to detail, that might take, 9, 10, 12 hours. So you've got to be very quintessential about how you boil down the essence of the story and tell the most salient key points. And a film is an emotional landscape. You are trying to actually, through the visual media, you're trying to actually take someone on an emotional journey. So as long as you can read the book and understand the emotional journey that author was trying to give you in prose, if you understand that, then ideally a good movie should result, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They seem to be going in the hands of people who don't love the book, they don't respect their creator, and they certainly don't understand the journey, and therefore that doesn't seem to come through on the screen. I'm finding a deep sense of foreboding whenever I find a book's being turned into film. I don't know about you guys.
Yes. Oh, there's some books that are filmable, and some books are, you can't film them for love of money. I mean,
Childhood End.
Sorry?
Childhood End.
Yes. A book that comes to mind is Herman Hesse' Steppenwolf. There is a film, and it's literally, it's word for word, scene for scene, page and page, directly on screen. The book is very hard to understand. You have to really delve into the madness of the writer and his object about the wolf having sex with his grandmother or whatever, because there's this animated sequence about the wolf changing, and it's actually also the first film that actually towards the end used video filming. But people looked at it and going, what the hell is that? Even the critics didn't understand the film. although despite the fact it's exactly from the book, even the ending is exactly the same, the film failed because the book is totally unfilmable, and there's other films based on books that couldn't be filmed, or films that should have worked based on a book, like Hounds of the Baskervilles. You know, it's easy enough to make a film of, but there's never been a good version of that book based on Conan Doyle's book, because they're always constantly changing it, like the Hammer version having, you know, witches and sacrifices or something else. Only decent version I found is a Russian version of Hounds of the Baskervilles, and they got the essence and the soul of the book, and I thought it was, well, there you go.
Kind of just flowing on from what the other two guys have said, is that we all, when we read, have images in our mind about books and the story that we're reading. We can all see a character differently, even though an author has spent a painstaking amount of time describing it. All of us can actually find a different image for that person in our head while we're reading it. And you know, when you find out that they've cast a brunette to play a blonde, your first reaction is to pull your hair out and go, no, that's not how it goes in the book. But all of us have different interpretations of what we're reading, and I think we can tend to, especially with fantasy work that we know and love, and we read a lot, and science fiction as well, we read the book repetitively. We come to feel a bit of a bond with the characters in the story, and we want to make sure that if someone's going to put it on screen, it's a version that we will recognise. And I think this goes back to what you guys were saying. There's inevitably going to be problems, though, translating it to the screen, because it's going to be different for a different medium. But you know, there's things that they can do when they're making the film to do their best to respect the work. And there's been good examples of that, and there's been bad examples of that. It's a topic that is, for readers like us who get right into this stuff and read it more and more and more and more, the image that we have is repeated and burned inside, and it's quite different sometimes to what a director or a producer will see when they read it for the first time.
Well, that's picking up your point. I've read somewhere that certain directors will pick up a property and say, this is my property, my version, I'm the director, despite the fact they may or may not know the actual words or the product itself. They just take a title or the essence of the book and change it whatever they like. That's, for example, although this is not book, but this is maybe TV, about 10 years ago they were planning to do a Man from U.N.C.L.E. film, and it was done by a well-known person with just a letter, and basically this is his version of Man from U.N.C.L.E. Some fans went down and saw some of the shoots and went horrifying, saying this is not right, and contacted the copyright holder. He went down and said, like, no, you're not doing it, and shut down the whole thing, and that was it. No more Man from U.N.C.L.E. film, because he said, this is my version of Man from U.N.C.L.E., it's got nothing to do with the TV. It's much the same way as if you look at the Avengers film, it's got nothing to do with the TV series. There's nothing, because the director didn't know anything about the series itself. The screenplayers, the screenwriters didn't know anything about the original series. I put in what the Americans thought about it, and you got a mishmash of crap. And that's what we're getting when they do this. They change things because they think, oh, this woman looks good because it's, you know, she's got that look, or we do this thing and so forth. But it doesn't match up with the whole story. It doesn't match. And also the editing style of certain films, you know, it goes one way, then out another, and it doesn't match at all, whatever.
Paul, do you think you could give us a bit of a rundown broadly about how the process works when someone picks up a book to look about turning it into a TV series or a film? What are the sorts of broad conceptual ideas they're working from to start with?
What they're usually doing is looking for something that's proven itself as a story. So looking for something that has a fan base or has a very solid reputation. So there is there's actually a couple of, literally there's about 2 guys in Hollywood who have the rights to a lot of the classic novels. But so they came to me and they said, if you had to pick a classic novel, science fiction, what would you choose as a movie?